Doug Jones became the first statewide elected Democrat to win in Alabama in 25 years this week. The win over Roy Moore released Senator Cory Gardner from a potentially sticky situation, since he called for Moore to be expelled if he were to win and get a seat in the Senate, despite the fact that the RNC and President Trump supported Moore's campaign. David, we've heard plenty on Moore and Jones from the national networks. We don't need to go too much into there, but looking at Cory Gardner, did he dodge a bullet here, or are we seeing something in the future where this difficult tightrope to walk of one to be maybe a centrist from Colorado, because that's usually where we go voting-wise, but also seeing where his party is going for the sake of party?
I think Cory Gardner did the right thing for both his political career, for the state of Colorado, and for the Republican Party in the long run, and for the United States. He was the head of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, whose job is to elect Republican senators. And he said, we will not give a penny to Roy Moore. And then when the Republican National Committee, separate organization, when they flip-flopped and went back to giving money to Moore, Gardner said, absolutely not. There are no circumstances under which the organization he controlled, the Republican Senatorial Committee, will ever do anything for Moore. He is right that Moore was, for so many reasons, reprehensible and would be a very bad person to have in the Senate or in any position of power. And on top of that, Cory Gardner's job is to elect Republicans in 2018, hold on to that Republican Senate majority, and potentially increase it when you look at it state by state. Roy Moore would have been an albatross around every Republican. He would have been tied to him, and Moore would have gladly done that. He would have, among the things Cory Gardner's helped is television in 2018, because Roy Moore, you compare Donald Trump to like, oh, what stupid thing can I say today which will make everybody argue about it on cable TV? Roy Moore would have turned that up 100 times worse, and the stupidity level on political television would have gotten even worse, if you can believe that. So thank you, Cory Gardner, from, among other people, not only all patriotic Americans who disagree with Roy Moore that America's the focus of evil in the modern world, but from all television watchers across this great land.
You're saying we missed the opportunity of maybe a really outlandish offensive tweet from President Trump and Roy Moore going, hold my beer. And
yes.
Yeah, I got it. So Eric, is this, did this tell us a little bit about what Cory Gardner is going to be facing the next 2 years? He's not up for re-election in 2018. He's going to be working for other Republican senators, but he's not up for re-election himself. But 2020 is not that far away. Are we seeing the challenge he has the next 2 years?
Cory Gardner is walking a tightrope, and the tightrope got immensely tighter and narrower when Donald Trump took the White House. Not when any Republican took the White House, but when Donald Trump took the White House. Both parties won in this election. The Democrats won because they reversed a losing streak. They now have a 49th U.S. Senator. Their win is obvious. The Republicans won as well by avoiding the embarrassment that is, and the continuing embarrassment that is Roy Moore. Who lost is Donald Trump for foolishly, predictably, but foolishly jumping in with Roy Moore. Steve Bannon, Trump's former, and some would argue perhaps still current advisor and Svengali or whatever relationship they have. I think Gardner has two challenges. The 2018 challenge as head of the National Republican Senate Committee is he's going to be faced with these kinds of primaries that Roy Moore won around the country, because Bannon is not trimming his sails, and they are going into Arizona and Nevada and a host of, maybe North Carolina,
Colorado,
and a host of other states looking to primary incumbent Republican senators or centrist Republican candidates. And the Republicans are going to do a level of holy war here over the next year that I think even dwarfs what we've seen over the last year, because lots of Republicans are going to start running away from Trump as his numbers crater and as their reelection comes closer. And then, of course, there's 2020, where Cory has to run in a blue state in a presidential year. Let's not forget that Cory Gardner got elected in a non-presidential year, which is a little easier for Republicans. He has to run for reelection, presumably when Donald Trump's name is on the ballot.
Penn, what did you think of what we heard from Cory Gardner in response to before the election and after the election? What do you estimate?
You know, I agree with Eric in one respect. He is walking a tightrope, but I think First, there's the show piece. I mean, all right, so he took an easy whack at Roy Moore. That's easy. But the other thing Cory, I think, needs to be sensitive to is how his comments are being perceived, because he also took a shot at Doug Jones by saying, well, now that he's elected, he needs to vote like a Republican. And the way that's playing on some social media circuits is you've got a Democrat who won with 90+% of the black vote in Alabama, and you've got people, I've seen some posts where people are questioning whether Cory is saying, so, Jones, vote with us and ignore all the black people who got you elected. Now, maybe that's not what he was thinking or what he intended, but that's how people are interpreting that. So he's got to pay attention to that. The second thing is he's got to deal with substance, too. He's got to remember that Colorado is a purple state trending blue. Colorado's a state that gave us Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders in the primaries, and I think his biggest problem is if he supports this tax legislation, and it appears he's going to, and if he, as part of that, repeals some of the Affordable Care Act, which has been popular in Colorado with the Colorado State Exchange, I think Cory is going to belie his credentials as a centrist and be perceived as someone who's just, the attack person for Trump and Bannon, and I think that hurts him, and I think he's got to be careful.
Patty, Senator Gardner, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well, he was good in this situation. He made all the right moves. People who didn't support him before are thinking at least he took the right path this way. We were talking about losers. Another loser on this one is Al Franken, who resigned, who has not been accused of a crime. The most he's been accused of is bad taste in groping, I believe. But this was the right thing. Voters got to make the decision on Roy Moore, and good for that. Good for those voters. They just wanted no part of him. Who knows if Minnesota voters would have gone the same way on Al Franken, but we'll never know.